and he takes it to a Harley-Davidson service shop in southern Wisconsin and goes, "Can you guys help me with a car project?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, I think so. What do you got?" He goes, "I have a Tucker convertible." And the guy goes, "No, you don't." So a lot of people can say a lot of different things about Preston Tucker, but I think one thing that everybody agrees on is this guy was absolutely a car fanatic. Preston Tucker grew up born right after the turn of the century, and in his early teens, he's buying up cars, and this is cars are a brand new thing, period. And he's picking up cars, he's hopping them up, and he's flipping them to make money. A little while later, he actually tries to join the police force in town, and his mom tells the police department that he's too young to be a police officer, so they kick him off the force. He gets married young. He's got a Studebaker dealership for a while, and then he's a salesperson for Studebaker. He's a salesperson for Pierce Arrow, salesperson for Dodge. I mean, this guy is absolutely a car guy through and through, but I think obviously the thing he is most known for is the Tucker 48. Now, Tucker 48 was a new car that Tucker had envisioned. Coming out of World War II, he knew that the big three really lacked the innovation and the excitement that a lot of people were looking for in the car industry. And he wanted to create something that was new and innovative and fun and was exciting for the customers. He was originally going to call it the Torpedo, but because of the whole World War II thing, decided that was a bad idea. So he went with the 48, thinking it was going to come out in 1948. Actually, the Tucker launch went terrible. He had a bunch of prototypes made, and they couldn't start on their own. They had to be plugged in on the side. And so he told the engineers, just don't shut them off for the whole thing. But they ran really loud because he had these different engines in them. And so then he told the band, just play as loud as you can and it won't be a big deal. Then they started overheating because they were sitting there and a couple of them were steaming off. They didn't go in reverse. It was a real disaster. But at the same time, people didn't seem to care. They were really excited about the Tucker automobile. The 48 was going to have all sorts of really cool, innovative things. The idea was it was going to have these torque converters on the rear instead of a transmission or transaxle, so directly driving the rear wheels, which was innovative for sure. He never actually got that done. He had to do a cord transmission, but that's what he was trying to do. Everybody knows about the big Cyclops headlight too. Big headlight right in the middle, and actually rotated 10 degrees left or right, depending on how you were turning the wheel, which was really cool at the time. Laminated safety glass, safety cage for inside the car. Awesome car. So Tucker is building these cars. He builds about 58 chassis, and they're not really a chassis, but they're basically a chassis because some of it was tube frame, some of it was unibody and whatnot, but call it 58 chassis. And he gets 36 of them built, and then the SEC comes in and there's a whole hoopla. And I think Steve Leto actually laid out pretty well kind of what happened with the whole Tucker thing. But ultimately, he gets 36 of them built. Another 14 get finished later on. So he's got 50 cars. A 51st one is kind of started, and the factory is shut down. Now, during this time, one thing Tucker's trying to do is to prove that he's actually a real car company and he's thinking about the future. And so to do that, he had a couple of chassis that were used as prototype models for what a future Tucker could be. One of them was claimed to have a wraparound rear window, and everybody rumored that to be chassis number 57. But you could never prove that was chassis 57. They had pictures of the prototype, but nothing that tied it to the chassis number. That's the official story for chassis 57 per the Tucker community, but there are a lot of people who seem to believe that chassis 57 was originally a sedan, a four-door sedan car like all the rest of the 48s, and near the end of the trial, Tucker calls in some engineers and said, we're going to work on prototyping a convertible. Top secret. And Tucker was notorious for over-documenting everything, but for some reason, he didn't want this documented. So the way the theory goes is he had these engineers take chassis 57 off the line, take it in a back shop. He hired an outside engineering firm called Lenke Engineering out of Milwaukee. Tucker factory's in Chicago. This firm's in Milwaukee, and they come down and they chop the top off of one of the sedans. They immediately realize the frame, the chassis just can't hold this, right? So they're in there welding up all this extra framework to kind of stiffen it up. And then they go, okay, all right, we got that taken care of. Now we need to kind of shorten the windshield a bit, get a little more raked, longer doors and everything. And they've got the whole car tore apart to get at the frame anyway. And it's about the time that they get the window and the doors done that the SEC trials all finish and Tucker is shut down for good. So that's the time that the SEC comes in and they shut down the plant, and Lenke Engineering at the time realizes we could lose all this work that we've done on this car. So what are we gonna do? So it's the classic, like straight out of the movies, right? They go into the factory, everything's supposed to be shut down, no one's supposed to be in there. They take the prototype, they take the chassis, they take all the body parts that they have, and they take it up to their place in Milwaukee, throw a tarp over it, stick it in the corner. It sits there for several years. And so the way this story goes, the way it's believed to have happened is one of the original engineers who worked on the Tucker convertible project with Linky said, someday I want that car. Someday I want that car. And it's like 15, 20 years later, and he's going to retire. And he says, can I buy that car now? And they say, yeah, sure, no problem, right? It's taking up space. And so he buys it. And he's always going to finish it, right? That's the way it goes. And he eventually doesn't. And of course, it passes on to another guy who was in the know of the whole story and had worked on it a bit. And it passes through like 3 or 4 other hands, all people who had been tied in to this whole thing originally when it was going on at the Tucker plant. Until about 1981, a gentleman called Al Reinhardt picks up the car. And same story, he had heard about the car. He wasn't directly involved in it, but he's going to fix it up. He's working on it kind of on the side for a long time, picks up an original Tucker engine, an original Cord transmission. So he is going to make this thing the way it ought to be and finish rebuilding it. Gets about late 80s, like 1988, and he's like, I can only get so far. And he takes it to a Harley-Davidson service shop in southern Wisconsin and goes, can you guys help me with a car project? And the guy goes, yeah, I think so. What do you got? He goes, I have a Tucker convertible. And the guy goes, no, you don't. But sure, we'll take a look at it. And he brings it in, and sure enough, it's a Tucker convertible. And the guy's working on it for about 4 years at the Harley shop. And in the back of his mind, he's going, this isn't really a Tucker convertible. It's probably a Tucker, and somebody cut the top off, whatever. And he's working on it one day, and a guy walks in, and he goes, that's Tucker. The guy goes, yeah. He says, is that chassis 57? And the Harley shop guy goes, how do you know about this car? He goes, well, I worked for Tucker. I was on the line there, and I was with the engineering team, and I know all about this car. You do? He goes, do you know anybody else? He goes, yeah, I got friends who are still around who worked with Tucker, and they know about this car. He brings in another guy. First thing he says when he walks in, that's chassis 57, the convertible. I didn't think that thing was still around. And so then over a couple of years, you have all these other guys, because they're all talking to each other, right? They're retired Tucker people. They're still friends. And you have people wandering in this Harley-Davidson shop in southern Wisconsin to look at this car, and they're going, oh, yeah, I worked with the company that did the steering wheels for Tucker. I know this car. I worked for GM, and I was a designer, and I know these guys, and I remember when they were working on this car. And the story just keeps building and building. Well, fast forward to the early 2000s, and there's a gentleman called Justin Cole who wants to open a dealership in southern Wisconsin, and he's kind of dealing back and forth with some specialty cars, and he finds out at a show that one of his customers has a Corvette that's going to be part of a 3-car trade with this guy for this Tucker convertible. And he goes, wait, what kind of car is this that you're going to trade for in this Tucker convertible? He goes, that's really interesting. So he, of course, does the end around, goes directly to the seller and says, I will write you a check for the value of all the cars that you're going to trade for, and I'll put a little fluff on the top for you, but I want this Tucker. And I think the deal is for about $500,000 or so. And Cole gets the chassis, he gets all the body parts. Like I said, he's got the engine, the Cord transmission, he's got frames for the seats, but not actual seats. And he sets about restoring it. And he owned a dealership in Madison, Wisconsin called Benchmark Classics. And it was in a building that used to be Capital Corvette. Capital Corvette was this crazy dealership that had all these cool Corvettes and everything, but eventually went under in this huge fraud scam back in the mid 90s. So everyone in town was really excited to see the next great dealership, and people would come in and visit, and just to see the Tucker, just to see how the progress was going and to learn about the story, because obviously nobody knew about this Tucker convertible. And I remember going in there several times as a young adult. At this point, I'm in my 20s, and watching the progress on this car as they're restoring it and rebuilding it. And eventually he makes the interior, it's really close to a Tucker design, but he uses all the original frames and everything. He sources a ton of original Tucker parts from these Tucker collectors, and the car's like 90% original Tucker parts. He had to fab up like the deck lid and some of the rear bodywork and stuff, but the rest of it's all real Tucker. And he painted it this gorgeous blue, which apparently was Tucker's wife, Vera, her favorite Tucker color. And the convertible project was called Project Vera, so it made perfect sense. And he got the car all done. I don't know how much he had in it. It had to be at least $1 million, all said and done. And he goes to try to sell it. As you get closer and closer to finishing a project like this, a ton of people are like, this is really awesome. This is really amazing. and they're loving the story about what happened to the car and how it was hidden for years and passed through all these different hands. But you've got true hardcore Tucker guys saying, this isn't legit. Chassis 57 was the wraparound window. It wasn't this car. We know this isn't the real thing. So there's this huge fight in the Tucker community about whether or not this is a genuine Tucker. I think Cole had it listed for $6 million to start with, drops it down to 4, sent it to auction a few times. One time at auction, actually a tent blew over on it and they had to fix it up, but it still drove across the block for the auction. So that was cool. He can't sell the car for anything. It's getting bid up to $1.5 million. I think one auction it didn't even break $1 million. And he's trying it on eBay and bring a trailer, and all these big auction houses are trying to take it, and he can't move the car. Several years go by, and he's eventually able to move it to somebody else, and somehow or another that person was connected to a dealership down in Texas. I think it's Accelerated Auto Group in Texas, and they actually have the car today. Obviously, it's in gorgeous condition. It's got 50 test miles on it. And again, original Tucker engine, Tucker cord transmission, all the Tucker features. The Tucker community has come out and said, while we don't think that the whole background of this being a true convertible is true, we have to admit this car is almost entirely genuine Tucker parts. It's basically a Tucker in all but being a true Tucker car. Obviously, Accelerated Auto Group in Texas challenges that. They say, no, we believe the documentation we have. They have letters from one of the original accountants that worked at Tucker to Al Reinert when he had the car saying, hey, I heard you have the Tucker convertible. How's that coming along? They've got different statements from people saying that they saw the car in the factory with engineering drawings at the time, people who worked for Linky who said they worked on it, and so on. There's still a big debate in the Tucker community about what this car really is, and I think everybody agrees, though, that if Tucker ever made a convertible, this is what it would look like. And if you want to believe that this car is really a Tucker, and I'm not a Tucker expert, but I love the story. I watched it get rebuilt. I want to believe so bad that it's a real Tucker. And if you believe it's a real Tucker and you have $3.5 million burning a hole in your pocket, you can go down to Texas and buy it yourself.
This month we've got our 2 best deals ever back from Glossit. We've got their DIY ceramic coating kit, which is a $210 value including their graphene ceramic coating plus a bottle of their ceramic detail spray, which makes the application so easy an idiot like me can do it in my own garage. That's a $210 value for just $69.99, or if free is the better price, you can get a bottle of their award-winning detail spray for free. Just pay the shipping and handling. We've had to limit that, so I don't know how many are left, but check the links in the description below and find out which you can get. Either way, you're going to get some great Glossit goodness.